Did Sean Payton have sex with Teddy Bridgewater?
You mentioned the Saints and how Sean Payton was able to have success with Bridgewater and Taysom, but he had great success previously with...
Okay, that's an old clip, but I just saw it in Doug Peterson's reaction. Perfect. Not as hilarious as this reaction.
Have we seen maybe a premature explosion, or is there still an explosion?
All right, let's regroup here.
Philly is doing great with Nick Sirianni, but I will never understand how they let this man go. Welcome to That's Good Sports. It's your Friday NFL news dump. I'm Brandon Perna, king of dumps, and I've taken more time evaluating which news stories to discuss today than the doctors in Miami spent properly diagnosing Tua this week. Now, I've already covered Tua's brutal injury from Thursday Night Football, but I wanted to play Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel's response to what happened with Tua this week, because I think that's important. Plus, the Brett Favre story keeps getting worse, and there are some eerily similar PR explanations to the Myles Garrett car wreck and previous NFL player car accidents that we're gonna look into today. That's Good Sports is the show. Today's episode is sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. If you want to test your skills against me in some weekly fantasy leagues, download the Underdog app or go to underdogfantasy.com and use my code THATSGOOD. Now there's a link below for this week's contest. I'll have the details in the description, but as soon as the league is full, the draft starts. Most will be around 6 rounds. It's really simple. You just draft your team in my league, and whoever scores the most points that week wins. And I'll do multiple a week, so once the league's full, please come back and check if you want to join, because I'll probably have a new link for the private drafts. And if you want to use your brain for the pick'em games and live in one of the qualifying states, you can win up to 20 times your money. Build a pick'em entry with 2 to 5 players and guess higher or lower in stat totals for the week, or pit 2 players' stats against each other in the Rivals contest. Again, just use my code THATSGOOD or the link below, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. $100. Saints quarterback Jameis Winston missed practice in London, and the Saints are currently scrambling to try and determine how to replace his interceptions for Sunday's game. If Jameis doesn't play, it's Andy Dalton, and Michael Thomas has already been ruled out for the Saints, so I don't like their chances. Speaking of receivers named Michael Irvin is a football treasure. A football treasure who loves medical equipment.
We cannot just feel the temperature in the room. We must be the thermometer. Oh, yeah. Oh, do y'all get how great that is?
I don't understand how anyone on earth does not love listening to Michael Irvin talk about anything.
And then they put that damn tape on every time one of them make a play. I saw Devontae Smith jumping up, taking balls down.
He could tell a story about paint drying, and I would listen to every word. And as I sat there, Rich, looking at that final coat of eggshell white, I was in awe, Rich! Awe of the wet paint turning dry, Rich! And now I'm realizing he's probably cocaine, right?
I said, oh God, this is.
In a very cowardly move, Raiders head coach Josh McDaniels refused to speak to the Denver media this week. Maybe that's why God tried to kill him. Shout out to whoever said that was just God trying to charge his Roomba. Now, typically, head coaches make themselves available to the opposing team's local media game week. It's very standard, but Josh is too much of a child to talk to Denver media because he knows how horrible he was while he was the head coach in Denver. A move he just stole from Pete Carroll, who did the same thing week 1. And Pete's team, Pete's team won. Oh shit. Is this the secret to beating the Broncos? We're gonna find out. Either way, it's rude. Now, of course, the most viral clip of the week was Russell Wilson as the new Subway spokesman.
It's called the Danger Witch, and it's dangerously good. Be careful though, it's spicy. You ever done anything dangerous? Jeez, that is dangerous. I've done something like that too. Listen, one time, never mind, that's too dangerous.
And this is easily the worst thing any Subway spokesman has ever done.
Jeez.
Now, the Chicago Bears Twitter posted a very bizarre clip that they have not deleted. Now, it appears that their social media account manager had their phone in their pocket and posted it to Twitter, I guess. Justin Fields has stated that he actually thinks the video is fake because since he's been with the Bears, he's never actually seen a pocket. Now, this Brett Favre story is getting worse. The scandal's getting grosser. I did a video detailing everything already, but a new curd was revealed. Brett Favre was using money that his charity, Favre for Hope, raised, and he donated large chunks of that charity money to his alma mater. Brett Favre took money that was donated for the purpose of helping disabled children and cancer patients and gave it to the University of Southern Mississippi Athletic Foundation. Tax records show he funneled more than $130,000 to the school between 2018 and 2020 for sports. This puts Favre atop my scumbag power rankings list. He's still below Deshaun Watson and Dan Snyder, but now firmly ahead of Urban Meyer. So good job, Brett. Now, with Josh McDaniels currently getting dragged through the mud, it feels like suspicious timing for the Dolphins getting spygated during a closed practice at the University of Cincinnati ahead of their Thursday night game against the Bengals. Obviously, the Tua concussion has made this story irrelevant, but here's some context. The Dolphins left for Cincinnati early so they could sidestep Hurricane Ian. That forced them to practice away from their facility. The Cincinnati Bearcats were nice enough to host them. And then somebody got in and started filming their walkthrough and posting all of those clips to Twitter. Now, this would be a huge problem, except head coach Mike McDaniel was one step ahead. According to Tom Pelissero, McDaniel started playing 12 men on offense, thus making any of this intel entirely useless. Now, I bring this up, even though the story's irrelevant, to illustrate that we all believe Mike McDaniel is a smart guy. I also believe he legitimately cares about his players, and I think they believe that as well.
Talked a little bit about the game. I kind of was asking him questions about how he was feeling, and that happened for about 15 or 20 minutes, and then he pulled out his phone and started playing my cult favorite classic movie, Macgruber, that he watched and was like laughing with me.
I will suck your dick. I will suck your fucking dick. I will do it. Just join my team. I'll suck your dick. You can fuck me.
I listened to Mike McDaniel answer questions about the concussion after the game, and again, I believe him.
You feel like in hindsight you maybe should have done or could have done differently after he went down the first?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. If I would have, that would be irresponsible in the first place, and I shouldn't be in this position. I do not have any, absolutely zero patience for or will ever put a player in a position to, for them to be in harm's way. That is not what I'm about at all, and no outcome of a game would ever influence me being irresponsible as the head coach of the football team. The relationship that I have with this human being, so I take that serious, and I wouldn't have put him out there if there was any inclination given to me whatsoever that he was endangering himself from that previous game.
Like, you don't have to, but I believe his response. The NFL's come out and said they believe the Dolphins actually exceeded expectations in terms of their evaluation with Tua. I don't know if that's true, but that's what they said. So the question becomes, did the medical staff lie or just miss it? Or did Tua actually not get a concussion in the Bills game? All are possibilities. It's not the head coach's job to determine if any of his players have a concussion. A third-party neurologist cleared Tua as well. It's the coach's job to listen to the medical staff and proceed based on their medical advice. As for the medical staff, maybe Tua didn't show any of the telltale signs that would lead them to suspect a concussion. If an office park manager, though, can spot a concussion...
The moon-faced kid who crashed into the pole. He looks like he has a concussion.
I think a doctor should be able to as well. What needs to change, though, is the process for evaluating concussions. It needs to be more in-depth. If there's any hit that could possibly be a concussion or result in a concussion, a CT scan should be run of the brain, because that's the only way to determine with any certainty the extent of a brain injury. Now, did the Dolphins do that? Were they mandated to? We don't know, but that has to get better moving forward, and I hope Tua's injury leads to positive change in how the NFL approaches its concussions. And then, today's final story, it's about edge rusher Myles Garrett, who was lucky to avoid serious injury from a car accident earlier in the week. As it stands, Myles Garrett wants to play, but it's going to be a medical decision. So my guess is that everything that happened with Tua, Myles Garrett will not be medically cleared to play, even if he is deemed okay to play, because I don't think the NFL can risk that this weekend. According to Phil Trexler, Garrett was stopped 6 times prior to this crash, though, for exceeding speeds of 100 miles per hour. This time, Garrett was going 65 in a 45-mile-an-hour zone prior to the crash that caused his car to flip multiple times and send him and his passenger to the hospital. Myles Garrett suffered a shoulder sprain, bicep strain, and cuts when he flipped his Porsche. He still hasn't been ruled out for Sunday's game versus the Falcons, but again, I think the NFL should. The police have ruled out drugs or alcohol being a factor, but the story isn't exactly straight. The first report we heard was that Garrett swerved to avoid an animal in the road, but later the police said that Garrett struck a ditch and then a fire hydrant before flipping the car. So that story's changed. Now, Myles Garrett has said that this was a wake-up call and, he's gonna drive better. I hope that's the case, because it was just a year ago when another NFL player, Henry Ruggs, got drunk, was driving over 100 miles an hour and crashed into another car, killing a woman and her dog in Las Vegas. We don't need another example of how serious driving like an asshole is. I guess what I have a hard time understanding is if somebody within your league, right? The NFL's a big business. All these players and all these teams, they know each other, guys know each other, they know the story. They know the story about Henry Ruggs, and they don't see that as a wake-up call. They have to get into their own shit, as many of us do in our own lives, before we make a change. And I just don't want to see an accident like this result in something worse. Like, Myles Garrett was very lucky with how this accident shook out in terms of his health. But also, when I started looking into this, something started to stick out as being a little bit odd. And that's the theme of NFL players and car crashes being caused by an animal wandering onto the road, which seems to be a little too prevalent to be believed at face value. Exhibit A, we've got Alden Smith in a 2012 accident where the driver of the car he was in swerved to avoid a deer in the road and crashed into an embankment. To be honest, it's hard to find that information because Smith has been arrested so many times for DUIs and driving-related violations, but this happened early in his career before his reputation preceded him, and again, he was the passenger in this accident. Exhibit B, Falcons defensive lineman Rod Coleman flipped his car in 2004 to avoid a deer. Exhibit C, Vikings defensive end Everson Griffin does the same thing, swerving to avoid a deer and injuring himself last season. Now, Griffin suffered a concussion from that accident, and I think him saying how seriously he took the concussion protocol after that accident is a good reminder for all players and coaches right now.
Concussion protocol, I made sure to be real with it, to make sure that, I didn't have no symptoms and stuff before I came back in.
You'd think the open roads were like a horror movie, the way this happens so often. Especially to defensive linemen for some reason. The safest thing to do, if a deer does enter the road, is to hit the deer. That's what they teach you if you grow up in the country. It's the safest thing to do. And then there's also evidence that you actually hit a deer and you weren't, say, looking at your phone or just driving like an asshole. Thanks for watching That's Good Sports. Please subscribe here on YouTube. Make sure to check out my Brandon Marshall Forgotten Beasts episode. It's a lot more fun than all of this weird, messed up NFL news, I promise.